playing is one very pure emotion where people bond without any give and take. There's a very common defined task that people are doing, so they don't think about what am I to gain out of it. Abhi chodo science ko, let me become this guy who wants to be like a hands-on person. This is the quickest validation of idea that would have happened. When we built a community, with a very selfless intention. A lot of people say start small. Now I understand what start small means. Start small and start foolish. You don't know where it's going to take you.
Ritam Bhatnagar is one of the most curious people you will meet, especially around creativity. He's someone who started India Film Project with that insight. He's someone who's a Lego enthusiast because of that same thought process. There's so much to learn from him in understanding creativity, understanding the true value of hobbies, and everything that lies in between. All this and more on this episode of Take a Pause with me. But before you go there, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. Go straight into my chat with Ritam. I always think about what the first question needs to be. And because of the conversations we've had in the past, I actually want to ask you something. I want to ask you about how you were as a kid and which elements of that have stayed true till now.
So, as a kid, I think my personal development was completely what my dad had planned for me. So he's an astrophysicist. So he built one of the largest telescopes in the country. So he was traveling around the world for research purposes, and whichever country he used to go, he used to buy me toys and he used to buy me stuff. So I remember when I was 5 year old, I had a book where I could touch a page and it used to like read it out. So every page was like electronically connected kind of a thing, which used to be a fancy most stuff. So in my school, I was the guy whom barely people knew in the class, but I was the person who used to always get some crazy things. So my father, there's some plumbing work going in our house. So he got this PVC pipe, cut it, put a mirror, and made it a small telescope. I took the telescope to my assembly in the school, and I was like, with this you can see a star. And my teacher was so excited. She kept a post-school session for people to come and see whatever they could. The only thing which was visible through that was moon slightly enlarged than what you could see. So I was too much into building toys at home. So I used to fall ill very often. So the only way my mom could keep me sane during those times was she used to give me Lego blocks and she used to be like, play with it. And then I used to, for next 6 hours, I used to eat whatever she was feeding me because my attention was completely into blocks and everything. So my childhood was very much between science, doing cool stuff. So in science fair, I used to always win kind of thing, being very mediocre in my studies, but a very curious child. I wanted to know everything, how everything works. And I think by the time I was 10 years old, I learned Visual Basic. So my dad gifted me a book on Visual Basic handbook. So I could code small programs. I learned how to make a calculator kind of a program. I learned how HTML works. Then I learned how Photoshop works. There was a software called Paint Shop Pro, which was like a predecessor to Photoshop, which was easily available pirated. So we used to have this magazine called PC Quest, which used to come at our home, and you had free softwares which used to come with it. So Paint Shop Pro was my go-to tool, and I learned how to recolor black and white pictures. So my dad used to scan those pictures from his office, send get them in a floppy disk for me, and I used to recolor them into color pictures typically. And my dad used to tell saying that when this picture was clicked, this person was wearing a brown jacket. So I used to like make it brown and all those things. So I realized that I was very different in terms of what my skill set was, and probably my dad used to influence that a lot by understanding what area I am being more diverted into. Always at this logical side of things. So I always looked for logic. So because I didn't find logic in studying because there was no definite goal. So studies used to be my worst things. Like I remember my 12th standard score was so bad that I couldn't make it to a single engineering college. There were more than 70 engineering colleges. The only place I was getting was into civil, which used to be typically for people who were just barely making it out.
Yeah.
So in a way, a very shy kid. Most of my classmates realized that there was someone like this, but never noticed my presence. And someone who was over enthusiastic about stuff. So the moment I was back from school, I had a full day planned with me. So I used to go to drawing classes. I used to make science experiments. I had all those kind of mechanics and all those stuffs to do. I used to code softwares. I started, when I was in 10th standard, I started editing videos. So very basic editing. So my first video was a Mars some new 3D animation which had come in. So I said this was a 10-minute long. I'll make a 1-minute long video out of it. I used to do all those stuff. Luckily, my dad got a personal computer in 1989. So I was just 1 year old when he got a personal computer, just way ahead of time. And we had a black and white monitor. And I used to work on Windows 3.0 with a hard disk which was 10 MB. So like the Windows used to be 3 MB, and other 7 MB you could install whatever you would want to. So I started my computer journey back then. So by the time they introduced computers in my school in late 90s, I already knew how the typing works, how Excel sheets work, how Word documents work. So those basics were already sorted because at my home, my dad used to use Microsoft Office. So I think a lot of my learnings happened as a part of my growing up, which at that particular point of time I didn't value them because I thought these were like common sets. Everyone would have been learning this. Everyone goes through this. It's when I reached my college is where I started understanding that what I had done in my childhood was predominantly very different than how other people experience their childhood. Um, uh, and primarily for the fact that my dad had planned it in a certain way. Uh, Later on, I think I got a slight more creative inclination from my mom. So she was someone who used to write. She was someone who used to be a part of a lot of local creative circles. So I think from there I started picking up understanding poetry. Joined a drawing class when I was in my first year of college. So I said I want to learn this as a skill, which was again very
Not what you would
funny
do.
thing. Yeah, not a very masculine thing at a post puberty age for a boy to do in college. Go and say I'm going to my drawing class when most people are going to your cat coaching and everything. So that's how fairly my childhood has been. And I think whatever I am doing today, however I feel today, is thanks to the good parenting that happened at that particular time.
A few things I pick, right, is that you mentioned the word curiosity, and also the fact that a lot of what you were doing was you were not just what we call studying. You were learning through play. And one of the things we tend to lose out, especially in school, after a certain point, maybe you have that very early on. I think play happens in kindergarten, and then at some point kind of go, is that we tend to lose that slowly as we get older. The fact that play can be a great way to learn. And while you were talking about this, in my head, I'm thinking about the fact that was there a point where play became okay? Now that's only when you don't have time left from like serious stuff like studying
Yes.
for exams and studying for this thing, versus what you had was the fact that no, there's this, but play is where I'm actually learning, where I'm actually getting to experiment with things, etc. So, do you feel we still don't understand the true value of play?
I think yes. Just a conversation I was having with one of my school friend, and I told him about some comic book that I asked him if you can get it, and he's like, "Do you still read comics?" I said, "But comics don't come with an age.
Yeah.
They are meant for a purpose, and that purpose could be solved at any particular age." So, I think a very general perception that I've seen people around me having, and that's full of my Instagram DMs, where a lot of people reach out to me and say, "You have so many Legos because you have a kid at home." And I have to tell them. And every time someone enters my home, the first thing, even my dhobi will ask is like, "बच्चे हैं क्या यहाँ पे?" बच्चे नहीं, मैं ही बच्चा हूँ. It is the general notion that people think that there is certain age for everything, and they consider that playing is the most superficial form of learning. So you learn that thing, and then you move out to bigger learnings in your life. However, if you're talking about making a small toy house, probably that would have been a very good thing at childhood. You wouldn't want to do it in your 30s. But there are endless possibilities with more mature toys. For example, you could. I use Lego, and I think I saw people in their 70s, especially in West, where this notion is slightly lesser than how we perceive. I saw people using these for making a meaningful living out of it. There are people who are running companies and come like or 10, 15, 20 people company and doing some really. There is someone called Brickman Exhibition, Australia based guy, made a future out of just Legos. He goes across and conducts Lego exhibitions. Those are like 6 month long exhibitions, and he builds like really huge 100, 150, 200 kg models. So I think it's more about how people perceive it, and I think until that perception doesn't change, it's always going to be not that people don't like doing it. I think people just stay away from the fact that it's going to put them into a wrong self image. So I think that is where uh, this entire differentiation happens. But my personal uh, my personal experience was that the moment I think I was 28, 29 year old when I started picking up Lego again, 5 years back, and I said, and initially it felt like if it was like a reliving of childhood which was happening. But eventually now I've realized that it's not just a childhood which is living. I've actually thought of making a career out of it. Like I would want my entire 40s to be spent into something like this, because it just puts me into a very different meditative state of mind. It lets me, it puts me into a very sane zone. So after the entire hustle bustle of a 12-hour long work, when I come home, I know that everything which is chaotic outside, not constant, at least at home, this is one thing which is constant. This is something where I can pick from. It does it make me feel like a 10-year-old? Probably not now anymore. But does it feel like a person with a lot of curiosity with what today I do new out of my bricks? I think yes, it's a challenge. So the moment I'm driving back from home, my mind continuously wanders saying that what today, what am I going to create today? Did I see that in Instagram reel? Can I recreate that? Can I do something better than it? Can I, for example, last night my thought was, can I create an entire family portrait out of it, so in my new home I could put that at the junction. So I was telling my dad, I said, instead of like a normal typical photo, let's like make a photo out of Lego bricks and put it out, so it will look very different. He was like, no, 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 that would be like too much of experiment. So I think that's how when people give it a preference. When I saw people in India also doing it, it was a bigger boost for me, because I said, well, there's a 58-year-old guy in Bangalore who's been running an IT company, comes home and has like bought a separate flat for something like this. I said, if he's not worried about getting judged, why should I be worried about getting judged? So I think that is largely. Uh,
But what do you, if you had to put it down and say that this is what you gain, like I said, it's not a large concept in India, but if you had to put down and say this is what you gain from play and what you individually gain, what people can actually gain from it, what would you say that is?
Largely play, it does two different things. One, like I said, it puts you into a very sane zone of being self-aware. Typically when you are playing, you are into this entire universe that you create between you and the things that you're playing with. That's why you'll realize that when you give toys to kids, you don't realize where the time flies, and that's the same thing that happens with us. So I think it gives you that self-awareness, thing that okay, I am doing something like this, I can do it better. And probably during that time is when you also reflect a lot on what you have been doing outside of your home. For example, your professional, when I'm building, for example, I get a lot of my professional thoughts into place. Suddenly I get an idea saying that, hey, why didn't I put this into a deck? Why did I say this? Why didn't I probably have this point of thought when I was in an argument? So I think those things come, that self-reflective things happen. Second, I think it also creates a bonding when you are doing it with multiple people. For example, for me, my mom bonding started with Lego. So I and my mom never had a common topic to talk, and that's with like every grown-up man. The only thing that you do with your mom when you're living away is you tell her what did I eat, how the day was, what
Yeah.
did I do. You put the phone. So during COVID, I realized that while I was trying to, put the blocks across, my mom used to come up and she used to sit, and first few days she noticed, then she started helping me segregate. So she used to read the next step and tell me saying that you will need this, so I'll just put them in a bowl. Then she got interested, so she started making it, and we have come to a point where now my mom decides what we need to buy, what we need to do. So I think that entire building that happened, I realized if it could happen between me and my mom, it could also happen between spouses, it could happen between siblings, it could happen between teams. So I think playing is one very pure emotion where people bond without any give and take. There's a very common defined task that people are doing, so they don't think about what am I to gain out of it. So I think that is the second thing it gets.
You know, I think the bonding thing is so important, right? And I when I recollect my time with toys and with Lego as a kid, and I feel it's still continued. And when I was thinking about today, when I was on my way here for the conversation today, as a kid, for me it was not as much about building with the Legos and with toys, but for me to be in the room by myself with all the toys, and I would come up with stories and characters, and I would use paint. For instance, if there was a war thing in my head, there was suddenly like toys were sketch with the sketch pen were colored red, and my parents would come into the room to see all kinds of like madness happen there. And to even now, when I actually have to do like focused work, I like to be in a room by myself with a book or with a pen and a paper. So it also shows you what kind of an environment you get flow in, and you can actually translate what you learn and play so easily into work by just understanding the environment. And I think nothing like play gives you that feeling of, okay, this is the environment where I can truly flow and focus.
I think I was reading about flow state. It has been like a buzzword in the culture for last 2 3 years. So every time I studied, I used to be like, "What is this flow state?" The moment I'm in office, there are people who are just banging my door, asking things. Slack is always popping up. Even on Sundays when I go, there are hundreds of thoughts that keep on going. So whenever you see when working on an Excel sheet, you're not just working on an Excel sheet. Every 5 minutes, you think about,
Yeah.
"Hey, this appraisal is pending. This needs to be done. घर पे ये लेके जाना है." So many things will happen. Eventually, I think I was building one of the larger Lego sets, which takes around 30 32 hours to build. So on a weekend, Saturday morning, I woke up, completed my brush. I just sat. I said, I'm not going to move from this space. Just sit on the floor, make it entirely. I think I don't know by what time did it strike 11 in the clock, 11 p.m. in the night. It almost took 14 hours of my time, and I felt as if it was just one and a half hour that I spent, and did something meaningful. So I said, this is what getting involved looks like. I didn't care about my mobile phone, which is a very rare thing for our generation to not search for a mobile phone for 14 hours. I think that is where, for me, I discovered. I said, this is a really good state of mind. If every weekend I can get into this state of mind, this makes me productive. Even if it doesn't, it just throws out all those things that happened from Monday to Friday that I was worrying about. Because these Saturday Sunday, no one can take this away from me. I think that is, and it's a gift. Is what how I perceive it.
And it's taking a slight step aside from this is, how did IFP start? How did the story of, because I every time I know when it comes up, I'm always looking at the general buzz of people really wanting to create, and there is this environment of people who want their creative energies out there, which comes with it. But I'd love to understand the inception of how it all began.
So, it was a very random thought. Like, in my college, because I was not a great student, so I thought the only thing that could make me popular in Xavier's was that I could probably bring in, lead the student committees and take care of designing and sponsorships, like Joseph was mentioning about. I said, this is very interesting part. Let me do this. This will make me very cool. So during my college for 3 years, I used to be part of everything which was admin, management, getting sponsors. I think in my first year I closed a sponsorship which was like 60,000 rupees, and at that time 60,000 rupees was like
Yeah.
total budget of a college festival, close to a lakh rupees. So I was getting 60% alone. And the news spread in the college saying that there's this young chap who's got
60,000.
sponsorship. So now finally the festival is happening, kind of thing. So I said, this looks like a really sorted space. And as a kid, I wanted to become a space scientist or a computer scientist. So till because I opted for electronics in my graduation, and I was really good with electronics because it came in my genes. When I was younger, my dad used to make me solder his circuits and all those things in summer vacation. So I said, uh, "Abhi chodo science ko. Let me become this guy who wants to be like a hands-on person." So I was hands-on. I was a part of film club that we started in Ahmedabad while I was studying, and we used to show world cinema kind of films, and we used to show a lot of regional films. This is way back in 2009 when there were only DVDs. There was no internet, which is there. You couldn't watch a long form content on internet. And we had thousands of people who became members at a premium price. So I said, this is really a lucrative place to be in the media industry. So somehow in my mind, at the back of my mind, I said I wanted to be in the media space because looks like a very happening space. There's nothing you get bored of, or probably I was not exposed to enough things, so I thought this was the best way into it. Cut to I was in Mumbai on one of the projects that I was working. I was living with a couple of filmmakers who were students at Whistling Woods. And good 8 months that I lived with them, the conversation every day would be that we were going to shoot a short film. They assigned me the title of executive producer. So I was like very happy I'm producing something. good 8 months. I think for 7 months we planned, it never happened. Eventually I left Mumbai, and then till date I don't think so that film happened. So while I was figuring, I said, what do I need to do? Because I didn't want to take up a job. I didn't want a place where someone would give me an order and say, this is what you need to accomplish today. I said, that's not my cup of tea. I said, what space do I want to be in? So I said, there is a small gap that I saw, because these filmmakers, they were trying to do something, but because there's lack of a force that could enable them, probably if I could become that force for them. So I just, whatever coding skills I had with a friend of mine, we coded a website overnight. We called it Ahmedabad Film Project, and we put the rules. We said, on this particular day, we'll give you a theme. You have to travel down to Ahmedabad. In those 50 hours, you have to make a film, submit it in a DVD or a pen drive, and then leave for your city. And then we'll announce the results. So we did something like this, and there was no online payment, so there was a cash payment thing. So you had to come to our office or send a check for you to register. So the next morning, and I think रात को 11 o'clock we published it, put it on the Facebook group, made a Facebook group, added all our friends there, put this out, and next morning I come at 11 o'clock in the office, and there's a guy standing outside with a form from NID. He's a film student. He's Ninad says, saying that this is my 1,000 rupees, this is my registration form, I want to be a part of it. I said, this is the quickest validation of idea that would have happened, because less than 12 hours, this already business which is getting generated out of it, kind of like. So that's how the first IFP happened. We had people from 19 cities who traveled down, around 600 filmmakers who participated, made films, and we could manage to get Sanjay Gadvi, who was right in the Doom 2 fame back then. We could get him as a jury member and all those things. I think this is one-time activity. Probably I would go back to what I wanted to do, film festival curation. So I'll become a person who will curate festivals for private and government. Yeah. I kept on doing this. Meanwhile, a Gujarati film happened. So I produced a film called Kevi Rite Jaish, which is, I was 21-year-old, so I was the EP and also a distributor for that film. And that film went on to become the first urban film on a budget of 1 CR, and it went on houseful for in 170 cinemas for 8 weeks. So it became a turning point, like how what Shwas was for Marathi. Sorry, what Shwas was for Marathi. Kevi Rite Jaish became that for Gujarati cinema in a way. So I said, okay, I want to become a film distributor or a producer. And meanwhile, on our office landline, so my office is me and an intern. We get a call, my intern picks up, and she's like, someone is asking, when is the next film project happening? Like, are people expecting the next one? Because we never thought of doing it second time. And the thing with a festival is that if you do it once, no one cares. But if you do it second time, then people expect the third time.
Yeah.
So I said, now I'll have to think of it. And this was not a money-making thing. I was doing it more out of kind of love and also kind of activity to sustain when I don't have projects. So second one we did, we got Shujit Sarkar and Vikramaditya Motwane coming in, and around 1,200 people coming in. Then I said, now this is something that I want to do, like make it bigger, but see how much bigger can we do. So by the time we reached fifth year, we had made it completely online. We had participation coming from 4 or 5 countries, and we reached a mark of close to 12,000 people participating in our fifth year, which is big because typically there was nothing in that space happening. There are film festivals which are happening, which we still get compared to a lot of film festivals. I have to tell people, this is not a film festival. This is a different thing altogether. So we said, now the time has come that this should be a business. Like, it should have its own P&L. It should not be a hobby anymore. And we made it a business, got our first employee on board. Till then, it was completely interns run kind of thing. Then we moved the festival from Ahmedabad to Mumbai. We said, now it should go to a place where people can easily travel, and which is like a center activity. And then we kept on developing it, understanding things, what more do we want to do out of it. So the present form of IFP is probably something I didn't even visualize 2 years back. So when I started, I was so clueless that what I wanted to do. It was like, if I have to tell you, the first IFP we made 6,000 rupees out of doing the entire activity. We took like getting people and taking care of their travel and all those things which happened. But somehow the realization that now happens is that it was an important thing to do. I attend a lot of online workshops these days. So a lot of people say start small. Now I understand what start small means. Start small and start foolish. You don't know where it's going to take you. Because there was no business plan, there was a lot of pure intention. So everyone who kept on joining us, I told them, this is not a business. This is a community that we are running. We are doing it for the love of our thing. Don't expect to be getting paid the way you would have got at some other places. But but this will definitely be a fun thing that you'll remember for a lifetime. So the first intern from my first year to every intern who has been at IFP, which would be more than 200 people by now, they are like a family. They're just a call away. And when we do our annual reunion, when these people come in, we have to typically now take a banquet and get so many people inside because uh, it's a, what I was trying to tell you is that when we started, we were like so clueless about what we were trying to build, and now I ponder and tell my team. So just yesterday there was a new guy who joined, and there was no. He came in very early at the office, so there's no one to do his induction. So I said, I'll do your induction. So I'll take you through the entire journey. And he was like, "What? You started without a plan? Like what? You started with 1% team. You had first employee at the end of 5 years." I said, "Yes, that happens. Now it might look very difficult. Now I can't do that again. But
Yeah.
at that age, I was 21 year old, so it was like without a plan. It went in a flow."
And that's the thing, right? If you today morning, I'm rereading Creativity Inc. And I was running through one of those chapters where Ed Catmull talks about the fact that people assume that people start with a vision,
Yes.
but especially in a business that is around creativity, you stumble upon it.
Yes.
You don't arrive on it before you start.
Before you start.
Because and if you do arrive on it before you start, then it might not be the right business to get into, which makes sense, right? Because you start from a passion point or an area which you have interest in. It's not necessarily, oh, this is going to be a business. Because when you're talking, like, that's not you weren't doing a business. You were starting something which you thought would be a great community exercise to do,
Yes.
and it became a business over time because you saw an opportunity of how it could kind of grow into what it's become. But it's also learning the fact that if somebody asks that question, it's also the fact that we're so ingrained to say you need to have a plan, you need to have a business plan, you have what are the different phases, how are you kind of scaling it
Right.
up, especially in a creative business. And I'm generalizing. I feel if you go with that mindset, you won't be able to catch the
Yes.
essence of what it is.
I think a lot of people fail to understand when in a business like ours, they use terms like what's your ROI. I tell them my ROI is that out out of thousands of people now, I think close to 2 lakh people have participated in IFP in last 11 years. Just in filmmaking, there are 3 people who started their journeys at IFP or their filmmaking journey at IFP by making the first film, which is really bad, and they have won national film awards. For me, there are people who participated in the music challenge that we do, and now they're opening NH7 and Lollapalooza. They're the people who are now becoming face. So I said, for that me, that is an ROI. Now, how do I define it? How do I put it on paper? We did a classic mistake, not a mistake. I think it was more of a Shark Tank thing when you were watching the Shark Tank USA. So 2018, we went across to companies. We said we want to get funded, and we had couple of open offers. He said, "There's a festival. There's a huge community that we have built. It's something that we are really proud of." And everyone came back to us and said, "Okay, I'll ask KPMG to evaluate you." They asked us to send across a couple of decks. Most of people came back to us and said, "Where is the ROI? How do you measure ROI?" I said, "This. How do you use that term for a business like this?
Yeah.
This ample of satisfaction." There are people who write to us, hundreds of mails that come to us every month, talking about how IFP participating or even losing could change their life. Just a couple of months back, I was speaking to a brand manager at Mintra, and she told me, "You know what? I participated in the writing challenge, and I stood in the top 10. I didn't win, but when I appeared for my interview at O&M, I told them that this is one thing, and they said share the story, and they loved the story. That's how I got hired." And that's where I jumped from agency side to brand side. Now I'm doing this, and I want to work with you because I know what it has been. And like these are the people who are a testament to what we have been doing.
Yeah.
So there's no ROI that we can define. Like,
I think the ROI, and it's a tough one, right? Because if you look at from a pure finance business standpoint, it might be like, okay, this doesn't make, don't understand it. But the ROI is actually the fact that it's about the value that you're giving out there than the value you are gaining per
gaining out
se.
of it.
Um, and it's a multiplier effect, right? I feel especially in things like this is that if that person's gotten value from you, at least I am a strong believer that it circles back to you eventually. And the
Absolutely.
more people you do that for, it's not a community you own, it's the community you help create.
Help
And
create.
the problem is you want to own every community.
I tell my team a very simple thing, and this is like a Monday morning thing in every of our team meeting. I tell them, um, if you are exactly the same thing that you said, if you are going to add value without expecting it to return back, someday it will. You might, in fact, last year, A lot of our campaigns that we did came to us because those people were like ex participants from IFP. They said, I had a wonderful journey and I think you've built a credible platform. So I run this brand. I want to work with you guys and probably give opportunity to next set of people who might become like me. He said, this is what you're doing. Essentially, till date, at IFP, we don't have a sales team. We don't need a sales team, and we still do more than 30, 35 campaigns a year solely because most of them are because people who attended or people who participated coming to us, bringing us back with the kind of businesses that we wanted to do. Now, for the first time, we have got someone in sales, and that person is like, I have so much of inward queries which are coming in. I don't know where do I start from, because the continuously people are reaching out. I think that's how communities evolve. And something that I'm really proud of from this journey is because when we built a community with a very selfless intention. Versus nowadays, communities has become like a catchphrase for everyone. Every call I go on to, every brief is like, we want to build a community. I said, want to build a community, why? Because we want to drive sales. I said, if you are going to drive sales, then call them customers. Why do you want to call them a community? It's as simple as that.
Yeah. There's also the aspect of when you look at just the fact that people have continued to send in entries, are excited about it. Even now, when the assumption is that because you could just create something and put it up on YouTube, you could create something and find a medium. What do you think there is that we're not understanding about the fact that the volume of content might be so much, but people are still submitting their films to you, versus they could someone say, "Okay, why do you need to submit it? You can just put it up on YouTube and you can get recognition there. Do you need to actually go in for challenges like this?" What do you think people don't understand about the value of getting into a challenge versus, I mean, create an Instagram account, create a YouTube channel, put it all out there?
I think two things. One is collaborations that happen. Typically, what we have been focusing since last 6 years is we have been telling people that when you are making a film in 50 hours at IFP, on when you have been writing a story or when you have been participating in design challenge, don't do it alone. Do it with someone whom you wished you would want to work in the future. Create that collaboration and then make this space to probably build, understand, and see if this is the kind of working relationship you want to have with someone. A lot of people who reach out to us tell us saying that I found my editor at IFP, or I found my music arranger at IFP, or I found my vocalist at IFP, which is the kind of collaborations that we want to do. So we built a tool where we say, and the volumes have grown huge. Just 2022, we had 65,000 people participating across 7 different challenges. So for us to now match right kind of people with right kind of potential partners has also become kind of challenging. So one is we enable push a lot of people for collaboration, which doesn't happen in their day-to-day life. Day-to-day life is very comforting. You have a team, you want to work with that team, you think that only a good idea with the same team will be able to push you to the next level. Versus what happens is, with a different set of team, different set of thoughts, there is a better chance that you might be able to do something which is path breaking, because at the end every creator is wanting to do something path breaking. So I think collaborations is one. The second is self validity. A lot of times we kept on asking, we did a lot of internal feedbacks and surveys to understand why are people participating, why are the numbers still going up when there are so many platforms out there. And we realized that a lot of people participate because they want to get a validation done. And what we have been technically doing at IFP, because everyone has got same 50 hours to make a film. So there is no resource which is unequal, which means you might have best camera, person might have a mobile phone, you are still competing because the time is same. So we've seen like biggest of people, Bollywood directors participating, not being able to make it. And we've seen a lot of college people who make their first film so wonderful that as IFP we go and champion them to multiple film festivals. So I think the validation that where do I stand, am I going to be able to do it, when I get 3 months from a client to work on a film or a music, I am very comfortable with it. But when I have to work on deadlines, is this a place that I can do? A lot of people take back that understanding. And because that plays on a crucial emotion of people validating themselves, it's never going to die because the validation is always going to be required. Just that it might change its form from some art form to another art form.
Do you think these are the two elements we tend to not have enough of? I mean, I know you've spoken about content overload in general, that there's so much content out there. All of us are churning, guilty as
Oh, yes.
charged, of like just putting so much out there. The problem, I mean, anybody who's a content creator I speak to, the worry or the problem they face in their heads is not to make money; it's to actually be found, because there's so much out there. Um, and these 2 points you brought up, which is collaboration and just self validation. That's it. Um, are actually in many ways what's missing from the across every single content platform.
Yes. Uh, in a way, um, you know, the learning has been that uh, because we are creating so much of content, way back say in 70s, not 17s, way back in 1700s when people were creating content, everyone had a single aim. They wanted to create a masterpiece. So the entire life they used to work on one single masterpiece. We have come to a place where we are not wanting to create a masterpiece at all. We just want to continuously create. So the entire perception has changed from quality to quantity. People are wanting to create X number of videos. So typically a lot of Instagram creators, they have this thing saying that I will post 3 times a week. Which is like 12 videos or it's close to 150 videos a year is what they are aiming at. But have you ever thought out of those 150, you want to create one masterpiece or you want to bank on the fact that a miracle will happen and one of them might go viral? So I think the entire thought perception has changed. So people have started creating more because they feel that if they get discovered, it might be the biggest thing that would happen to them. Now, contrast it with someone who's creating 300 years back. For them, discovery was not a problem because they said, I am amongst the very few people who's creating, so I'm getting discovered, but I want to leave a legacy. And those legacies is what typically we start from. We say, okay, this is what I want to become, but we forget that to become that, you can't be, creating. It's like very simply, I was just telling someone, I said, it might be very funny that people are making joke about James Cameron taking 15 years to make a film, but because he cares about creating a masterpiece that will stay, because in 2100, which is almost 75 years from now, when people reflect back, they'll say James Cameron used to be a director who made a film, took 15 years, and it was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
He didn't make it, he'll take another 10 years to make someone. But I think that is what he's caring about. And then there are directors who make one film every year, but they don't want to be in the legacy. So I think
Yeah.
that's the larger difference.
And he also talks about the fact that, and I was watching an interview of his before the second movie came out, and he said that he took so long between the first and the second films because the same way, like before the first one, he had to invent the technology that would visually give what he required. And he says that he does a lot of these things to actually do accomplish what he enjoys doing in life beyond all of this, which is
Yeah.
to actually dive deep into the ocean. And he spoke about how he's actually found species um, under the ocean, which he has actually helped name. And that's his true love, is to go like deep sea diving and not diving, like, create that submersible
Submersible thing.
and
Yeah.
really go down there. And that made me think that at some point, imagine this person who's creating technology to create a cinematic piece that is just changing the way we consume cinema. He's doing all of that. So you can actually go do something which in his head is this true love, which is like go down in the ocean. And that for me was such an interesting way to understand what are we doing this for is a question we don't ask ourselves enough. We
Yeah.
always do things because it feels like we're supposed to do it. That you're putting stuff out there and you're creating content and you're distributing it and
Yes.
you're doing all that. But at the core level, what are you doing this for is a question I feel very few people ask themselves. And if it's only money, then you're not doing a creative piece.
I don't think so, even if it's money, because most of the people, like 98% creators, don't are not even making money out of this. They create, it's like how Simon says, you need to answer why. And when you ask a creator why are you doing it, 90% of the times you will not get an answer which is even going to satisfy. Like, is this a reason? Like, why you were wanting to do it? People don't have those whys sorted. Unless you don't have whys, creating content, which is fine, you become a factory, become a
Yeah.
content factory, just keep on pushing a lot of things out. Is that content creating an impact? No. Is that content driving you to become better creator? Perhaps. Is that content going to live its own life for next 50 years, 100 years? Never. So I think people need to answer themselves saying, I would do. I'm not saying don't create a certain number. Create a certain number, but then have that why sorted, which is where a lot of creators are going wrong. They think just creating someday might miraculously do a masterpiece, but we've never seen in a history of mankind that ever a masterpiece came out with Picasso creating the very first painting. I'm sure it. took him 40 years and a lot of mental landscape that changed because before that even came out. So I'm just saying that's where we'll have to someday or the other, we'll have to, as creators, redo this entire thing. We'll understand, we'll go back, and then we'll again take the right step. But when does that take come, I don't know. And the similar is happening on the, because you mentioned content overload, it's a similar thing which is happening on the other side, the consumer side. They're waiting for a masterpiece to come.
Yeah.
Watching every piece of content, hearing every piece of audio which is out there, thinking, saying that the next one would be the next big thing, and eventually they realize that they're just out of thousands of songs that you are producing, this barely one song in last 3 years which would have resonated with you. Why is the ratio so bad? Which is, I think, something that we
And
have
also,
to.
there was this recent data point, right, which came out. It was interesting to know that in the US, and there's no India research on this, consumption of older catalog music has actually gone higher than more recent music with younger audiences, and that's a interesting thing to think about. Is that younger audiences today are listening to old stuff, which was created, like you were saying, we created with that, not in a supply chain system.
Yes.
And some of the most popular artists across the world are still people who create in a disconnected manner, who create in in a fashion that is almost there's this term called the creative life, which is like, can you live your life in a creative way with the create with tenets of curiosity and really following stuff you are gravitating towards to put together, rather than making it into almost like a system, like almost making it into a factory of sorts, but really create it in that sense of the word. There's a deeper insight there, and at some point, I don't know when that curve is going to happen. I think it's happening, but we will realize that maybe volume is not the way for you to create.
Yes. Which way, and that should happen because, and typically that would be driven by consumers, not by creators. So when consumers will stop consuming and they'll say, you know what, I've wasted a lot of my time in waiting for a masterpiece, but it didn't happen. So
Yeah.
now what? I'm not going to consume anymore. You take your platforms, shut them, whatever you want to do, but we'll only wait for the best things that would happen. One of the reasons that, for example, film festivals work, just giving you an insight from an industry I'm more familiar with, is because they do curated stuff. So there are going to be 20 films that they're going to showcase, but those 20 ones are going to be much better than the entire Netflix catalog, which is like open for you. Not that Netflix doesn't have great content, it's like scattered.
Yeah.
uh, the festival will pick up the best ones and put it there. So I think it would be more consumer driven change, where the consumer would come in and they will make the creators go through that entire journey again.
And I think it also come from the fact that so many creative people will kind of go back to almost the children in them, because I think innately all of us discovered our innate creativity as kids,
Yes.
and we end up losing it. I don't think we lose it. I think we just choose not to give that creativity any form of growth as you get older. You can almost go back to that kid inside all of us, and and there is so much value in going back to that kid in all of us, right? And I've been doing that in recent years, and I know that you speak about this often. So if there's somebody who said, okay, I want to kind of go back to the what I used to enjoy as a kid, where does someone start?
I think from uh, finding what were the 3 or 4 things that used to appeal to them as a child. If you deep dive, it could be just going through your photographs and realizing, a lot of times we just
Forget.
wash out. We forget that this used to be a thing that I used to crave about when I was a kid, and now probably I don't even remember in last 30 years that something like this happened in my life. But when I was a kid, I used to crave about it. So probably this is one of the things. A friend of mine, he used to make a lot of clay art when he was a kid. Forgot it. Grew up while he was with his daughter. He was teaching her clay art. He realized that this is something that I used to enjoy a lot. So now he's like, daughter se set le liya. He's like, now I'll be making this, and he makes them every Sunday. He puts it on Instagram. He does it for his own fun. He's like, I told him, I said, why don't you create a separate page for this? A lot of people who are into clay art might want to learn from this. He's like, no, I just do it for a lot of self satisfaction. So I think that could be a good starting point to figure out what as a kid you used to do, because there is very lesser chance that something that you didn't do as a kid is kind of hobby you will be now be able to pick up. And the odds of starting a new hobby in your 30s is very difficult, unless it's like very peer driven and you have a huge group. So going to a hobby which you had already resonated with would be a great starting point. I think make a list, find out what were the four things that you used to do. Out of that, pick up which are the ones which give you like which fall in your time, which fall in your finances, which fall give you the kind of same peace that you're craving for. Eventually hobbies will become a bigger thing as well, I think, in years to come, because as people search for work life balance, they'll have to go back to things, and hobbies do that. They're like very perfect weight to your seesaw. So typically the way on one side you have huge weight which is called work. Hobbies are, so if you consider weight which is like on one side you have work, on the other side you have free time, the work will always take a priority, but hobby will try to balance it out. So I think people will fall to their hobbies. Either those hobbies will come from their childhood, or those hobbies will come from a third person who will inculcate them. They'll see something and they'll try to. I developed a hobby very late in my life which was about mandala. So I love doing mandalas, and then I learned Varli art. Entire COVID, I did somewhere around 60 mandalas. Every day I used to do one in the morning. So I used to wake up before the sunrise, go up, set up my table. By the time sunrise used to happen, for 2 hours I used to do something. And for a very long time I started figuring, I said, how did I develop a hobby like this, which is one some online workshop that I attended. Then I realized it is there because as a kid, as a first year student, I used to go to a drawing class. I was very bad at drawing, so I couldn't continue it for more than 2 months. But I used to see a girl who used to sit there in the corner and draw a mandala. And I said, I have these drawing skills, someday I would want to do it. And then that someday happened after almost 15, 17 years. So I think that is how your hobbies will come back to you. Just that you'll have to be a little bit more open about things. And I think that's what weekends are for. Like weekends.
And you also stop yourself at that age because you're like, oh, I'm not that good. Like you said, or like, oh, someone's going to like, why am I doing this? People are saying it's not nice. They'll judge me for how. It becomes this sense of comparison and competition, and you let go. I kind of feel that as you get older, you kind of let go of that need for competition. Maybe that's how we pick it up later in life.
Absolutely. So, I used to go to my childhood friends के घर पे my school friends के घर पे, and their moms used to frame their paintings from the school and put them in their room. And my paintings were so horrible that my mom never cared about framing them. And now when I started creating mandalas, which are really nice, I'm like obsessed with them, and I feel really nice that I could learn something at this age and do it. I tell my mom now it's the time to put, like, now show across saying that my 34-year-old male child is able to create something which you are not expecting him to do, which you expected him to do earlier. So I think now there's no comparison, even it, and everything is happening inside a closed room. Back then, everything, and typically in school, the thing is everything is happening in front of 60 or 100, 120 people. So there's also that sense of shame, saying that if I do a bad drawing, people will laugh at me.
Yeah.
Now, and by the time you mature, you go through this entire cycle where you have got humiliated so many times that you're like, this kind of humiliation is the least thing that I can easily take.
And that is the thing, right? Is that we often assume it's about confidence, but it's more about saying it's fine. I've been made fun of enough times as I've gotten older that you care less about. Um, it's like someone was saying the other day, like when you meet someone who's in their 70s or 80s and they have a bunch of things they do, they don't really care about like how if you judging them. They're like, it's fine. Like it's not something I'm bothered about. And I think the sooner you get into that space, it's not confidence. It's just like you don't necessarily worry about other people's judgment as much,
I
and
think
you can
as
really focus on what you're doing.
I think it is something that I think as founders, uh, this happens often, is that you have gone through that path so many times, of success, winning, humiliation, losing, and all of those things. I think the acceptance becomes much more faster. So my acceptance came at 30. I said bad things are going to happen in life. I will have to be prepared for it. The best talent will leave. The best clients will go away. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong, which has already happened multiple times. So why should I worry about it? Versus when I see a lot of my school friends not being able to take that step because for them they've not gone through so much of humiliation right now. So I think that's a founder plus point of being on this side of boat.
Do you also feel when you look at yourself as a founder and as an entrepreneur, do you feel that just the fact that you have this counterbalance of, let's say, the hobbies which are there, there's this, and I think for you, Lego is far big more than a hobby now, all do you think those have contributed seriously to your mindset as an entrepreneur?
uh, they have made me very more sane than what I was, I think, in a way. And it has also done a thing by giving me an alternate, saying that in my career, if I fail as a founder tomorrow, I have something else to look forward to, which is where I speak to a lot of founders who are worried about what if tomorrow things shut down.
Hmm.
I have nothing else to do. What will what will I do in my life? I think for me that part is sorted. So I know that failure is going to be a little bit more adjusting for me that way. And I think it, like I said, it keeps saying so. uh, I've realized that as a founder, your emotional curves are very different, or probably for me at least, they were very different. I used to take things very personally. I used to get attached to people so much that when people used to leave, I used to cry. I used to be like, this person was something. And then I realized very later in my life that things are going to go bad. My typical day would start with something that a finance guy would send saying that, okay, this is a conflict, now we'll have to solve this. Something that a HR person would send and say, okay, these two people have come back with now suddenly XYZ requirements. Some client call coming up where either they're not happy or they're very happy, so they want you to do something which is extravagant at a very small time. So all those things which happen, and during my day, I think I've kind of, it's like a, I don't know, it's like a circus. So it's like so many things which are happening across. And Mondays I look forward to this because there's a circus. But then by Friday you're done with circus. Like 5 days I attended a circus, now I can't attend. So for me, I think that sanity could come in. And now when I see back 6 years back when I used to not have this thing to look forward to, I used to be a little bit more traumatized by smaller things. So it used to affect me. I used to be like, okay, this shouldn't have happened. What will I do? I need to look forward to now. I know that the moment it's 7 o'clock, I reach home, I don't need to worry about those things. I'll check those things next day. That time is my time.
Do you call it? Do you consider yourself an introvert? Would you put yourself
For
in that spectrum?
for 25 years in my life, I used to be introvert. Then I married an RJ, and now the things have changed a lot. So I am the person that my team meetings, people have to tell me it's 12 o'clock Monday. We need to work because you've been speaking for last 1 hour. How much are you going to speak? So I think that has happened. But but I've found that I'm introvert in things where I don't find the right kind of company. For example, I haven't met a lot of founders who are traveling the same journey or they've opened up. So my founder journey has been very innate inside me. It's been like I've never discussed it. I couldn't open it. So whatever happens there stays with me. It bothers me. It makes me happy. But all those emotions are within me. I can't share it with people. For example, you know, I would love to talk about, I would love to bitch about hiring and the Gen Z hiring process. I would want to do it, but I can't do it. So it's like in those spaces, I'm very introvert, or I don't have space or probably power of expression. But otherwise, I'm not. I think now, out of two of us at home, I'm the one who speaks more without getting paid. She speaks for getting paid. So yes.
I asked you that question because I feel the perception of an entrepreneur is a certain picture everybody has, right? Is that
Yes.
you're hustling it there, you're focusing on business, you're building it for money, you're building it to scale. There's a grand vision from day one and all that stuff, right? And you are in many ways someone who's figured balance as a founder by having this hobby, having everything, as you're doing it for what you're giving and not necessarily what you're getting from it. And if I look at all the boxes that people traditionally in the cliched version of a founder tick, you don't align with that. But yet I feel a lot of your strength comes from inside, from it's an internal force in that sense. And which is why I asked you that question, saying, because what I've noticed is that when introverts become entrepreneurs, there's a deeper strength internally because you're not getting energy from people around. You've already got that
Yeah.
energy within you. And I've always noticed that about, which is why I asked you that question.
I think which is a very good thing, and I'll also take that as a compliment because I never thought about it in that particular way. But I think a downside that I've also seen to that is, and in my initial years that I saw it across, is because you're not able to convey things, and a lot of your communication gets blocked because people perceive you in a certain way.
Mm.
So I think when I remember before my married days, and especially even the first few years after that, I used to be this introvert guy only. So it was very difficult for my wife to take me to a public place and then expect me to speak. She's like, 2 hours we spent at a party, you didn't even open your mouth. I was like, what kind of conversation will I have with them? There's no conversation, so no point doing it. And the same thing that used to happen with my team as well. I used to be like, unless there is something really important, I won't communicate, because I'll keep that inside me. I'll process that information, but communication used to be a thing. I think I've worked on it very consciously over the last couple of years. I said I can't be this way. If there are 10 people looking up to me, I need to probably stand true on the perception that they would have built in their head about what it's like.
And I think that's an important piece, right? Is that for you to realize these are things I need to add to my arsenal and add to how I function, and really work towards that, and not necessarily look around saying, oh, these are things it's saying that, oh, I don't have these things, versus saying, oh, I need to work on them. And it's that simple flip of
Yeah.
looking at this as something that you need to learn rather than something which you don't have. And that's such a different mindset shift. It's almost like I'm taking an analogy from your favorite piece in the world. It's almost like how you look at Lego pieces and go, I don't know how to do this, versus let me figure out what this can become.
So when people people say that a person is coming from a business family, or typically people say baniya hai, khoon mein banda hai. I never used to understand why do people say that. Like, genetically, how does business flow? But I learned over a period of time is that a lot of people who come from business families, typically where they've been like third, fourth generation into business, a lot of these learnings come to them at home, versus a lot of these learnings happen to me by making those mistakes continuously. For me, probably, and even for you, that would have been like, did something, assumed something, went there, realized it's a blocked door, came back, and then figured out something else. For a lot of people who come from those families, those things are figured, so they know what are the no-go zones, versus we don't know what the no-go zones are. So we keep on trying a lot of things, and then you think on top of it, we are also curious animals, so we want to try things in spite of knowing that these might not work. So I think we keep on doing those things back and forth, and I think the time I'll become a perfect entrepreneur, I would be 70, because by then I would have learned everything that was not to be done, versus people who would have got that knowledge from the day one.
I cannot not ask you about this because I've been fascinated by this plan that you have to build a Lego city. I need to understand where this started. How is this happening? What is the plan?
So so I've been very fascinated with small miniature cities as a kid. I used to go to those aquariums and exhibitions and those child places जहाँ पे people used to create those cities जहाँ पे the trains used to move and all those things. And as a kid, my favorite game on computer was SimCity. So I used to make a city, and the fact that I wanted to run a city, or the other favorite game used to be Roller Coaster Tycoon. I used to create my amusement parks. Then I used to create crazy fees so that people can't enter, and then keep the rides free. I used to do all those things. And as a SimCity was way back, very new in India when my dad got it in, I think, 95,
Yeah.
96, and you used to be a mayor to that city. So
Much
that's
before, I think way before even Minecraft became, I think the
way bigger.
original was actually, if you look at in
Yes.
my head, SimCity.
Yes. So you had to build hospitals, then you had citizens, you had to take care of those citizens. Then there was a happiness index of those citizens, and that used to fascinate me. Every day I used to strive, saying that what do I do today to make them better citizens? Like the happiness index should go up. So I figured out that if I put more schools, the happiness index goes up. And then I was out of funds, so I had to create more hospitals in that city. Then people were like, why hospital? There's no fire brigade. Then I had to create a fire brigade. So this entire thought used to fascinate me. So when I was stumbling upon, like with my newfound love at the age of 30 about Lego, I said, what do I make? There needs to be a goal to it. I can't just go every day home and say today I'll create something, because I'll get bored out of things. So how do I set a goal to it? So I started researching what people are creating, and then came across a channel by this guy called Alex Noons, who's a chartered accountant. He's converted his entire basement into a Lego city. And then I found out there are many more people, but his city was the most fascinating one, like very detailed, planned. There's a 20-minute video with some 35 lakh views where he talks about why did he put a particular thing there, why is there a metro which is passing through a flyover, why has he put a separate residential zone, a separate downtown. Why is there a space research center? And he told about his fascination to make sure that there was a rocket launching facility inside that city, because as a kid he was fascinated by that thought that why a rocket launch is happening at some other part of the world that you watch on TV, why it's not happening in a city. So I said this is something that I need to build, because this is one, it's a goal which is 10-year long, so it will keep me busy for 10 years. Second, this will, because to achieve this I'll have to strive a lot in my professional life to make sure, because this city is going to cost me around 40-50 lakh ka thing. So so every year I'll have to earn enough to keep on funding this. And with my mom, this could be a great collaboration. So I said, I'll be the mayor
Yeah.
and financer. You become the builder whom I'm contracting to build the city. So then the problem was, how do I build? Because I have enough pieces to build it, but I don't have space. So we live in an apartment now. So I said, no, abhi to I need a huge room for this, because it has to be a pillarless room, at least 600, 700 square feet ka room for the city to build. So we bought a house for this. We went for a 1 year long house hunting, because every house we used to go, there were rooms for like 20 by 20. They're like, this is the biggest room. I said, itna to mere ko city banana hai. Then I need space, which is my workstation. Then I need a space for shooting my things. So then finally we found a house which had like huge room on the terrace. Like it's a good space for me to put a city. So basis that decision, we bought a property, which is now in hindsight it looks very funny, but I was so serious. I said, I want this property. I'll fight, even though it's far away from and going to probably add a lot of commute, and we'll have to take a bigger loan. But I want this property because this is where I envision my city coming to be. And every year I've decided to develop 50-50 square feet. So typically if I have to do 400-500 square feet, that will take good 10 years. And not that I can't do it, it's just that it's going to be a lot of financial burden to keep on making things at a much bigger level.
I think also the thing to learn from that is also just the fact that you're doing this over a 10-year period. It's not something, it's not instant gratification. It is, sustained progress and sustained work towards that. And I think there's so much to learn from that for someone to kind of channel, saying that whatever you're trying to build, whatever you're trying to do, you're not doing it, okay, I'm just going to get that rush right now and move on to the next thing. You're saying, giving myself a 10-year period to slowly build on something, and you're doing it just for personal satisfaction. I think every step of the way is going to be satisfying. You're not
Yes.
saying, it's not about the end result, it's about what you're doing along the steps.
I think there's no end result. But for example, first thing that I was chatting to a person, he said, if you're building a city, great, you know what size tables you're going to get. Have you done city planning? Or have you spoken to a town planner? I said, I never thought of it. He said, go, I'll connect you to a friend of mine. He's a town planner. He works with some Bangalore-based agency. Speak to him. Ask him, how would you make a perfect city so that if everything is logically put there, like as if it was a real town. Said, nice. I've aligned a Zoom call with him next Sunday. Said, I'll learn that. Probably a new learning which will happen, because I honestly I don't see an end goal to this. But probably if there's an end goal saying that doing this will have some XYZ gratification, that would be a incentive or a bonus to it. And because you spoke about delayed gratification, I think that is kind of, I have realized that it's like become a need of our entire generation. Our quick gratification is I keep on talking about this to my wife a lot, because we literally struggled, made our careers. She travels 25 days a week, a month, in making sure that we both are saving, and then we got this house which is like what we dreamt of when we started. He said someday we'll have a house which is like huge. We got a 8,000 square feet ka huge house, another 8,000 square feet ka lawn, and we're like so happy inside that we could do it. And I said, if we had thought of it on the first year of our marriage, we would have never been able to do it, because we would have thought of instant gratification. Let's get a home. Let's like have a whatever we could get it. We could have got it, made sure it was working. And when I see young people coming to me, there's a fresher we were wanting to hire. She said, I'm straight out of a design college, really good person. Like my designer couldn't believe that she was someone with such good skills at a 21-year-old. He said, I am expecting a package of 25 lakh. I said, where do I get you 25 lakh? Because that's not how I can probably be. She's like, no, that is what I deserve. I need it. I'll want to start from there and then I'll make it big. I said, I understand that, but you're not that I am not questioning your credibility. I'm just saying that for an industry to function, there are certain things which are defined. How do I put you inside? She's like, no, no, I want a big career, and this is where I start. I said, what kind of gratification are you looking for? The interns who come to me and they're like, give me 75,000 stipend. I said, are you crazy? They're like, my expenses are so much. I have to buy something for my girlfriend. Give me. I said, this kind of gratification is something that we couldn't think, and that's the wrong thing. It's like you're going to push your dopamine every day for things which are very fantasy. Typically for me, if I'm looking at 10 years, my dopamine is very correctly aligned, so I know that I'll not have daily release of dopamine. Probably it will happen the day my city ends, and then I'll look at 10 years in my hindsight. I'll say I'm a 43-year-old guy, and this I started 33, and I just did a brilliant job. And that day I'll have like 100 mg of dopamine release in my brain. This is what I was living for.
If you had to, and I'm just taking from what you say, if you had to have a piece of advice to someone who's building anything in the creative space as an entrepreneur, what would that be?
I would tell them that if you have to decide between two things, because creative journey in a way all across the world is a very unorganized thing. It's not like a pharma industry. It's not like a steel industry where things are defined. You just have three variables to work across. So decision making becomes very difficult. One thing I've learned is that if you have to decide between if I'm making a right decision or a wrong decision in a creative field, weigh down which is more painful. The one which is more painful is the right decision. Just go with that one. I think that is where you will grow faster. That has been like a realization that I've had, because how much data ever you have, whatever information you have, that's not going to suffice how brains are going to work outside. You're creating for people, or you're speaking to people who are very different than how masses are. So I think you can't plot data points. What might work in a very real world scenario will not work with creators or creativity centric business also. So I think that's the best way I've started taking decisions. I said, oh, this is a hard road to travel. I'm sure this is going to be the best one. I think it applies to everything in general, but for creativity, wale founders, I think this is more, is they like always floating in between. What should I do? Should I go into this? Should I become a production house? Should I do ad films? Should I do wedding films? I said, what do you think is going to be very painful for you? A feature film. I said, do feature film. If that's going to, because that's how you're going to grow.
Thank you so much for doing this, Ritam. It's been, as always, whenever I've had conversations with you, we've ended up going in such varied directions, and I'm happy we got to do this, and can't wait to get you back on this chair, and we got to do a deep dive into many more things.
Thank you. It is. I think I just went into a flow state of mind. That's what I was talking about. Yes.